Thank you. This is Arthur Gasparo, Chairman of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. I will call to order the March 10th meeting. This meeting is being held entirely virtually via Zoom and will be both audio and video recorded. Please direct any questions through the chair and mute your microphone when not speaking. Um, Before we start our official meeting tonight, I would like to have a moment of silence in memory of Miss Jeanette Topham, who served on the commission with us and was such a great woman. So if we could just please have a moment of silence in her memory. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to review the agenda as drafted. Is there any questions, comments on the agenda as published? Hearing none, we will consider that adopted unanimous consent. I failed to say, actually, I'm sorry, I should back up and just take roll call of the commissioners who are present. Mr. Levitt,
Present.
Mr. Biscarin,
Here.
Mr. Marks.
Here.
And it appears, I don't believe we have Ms. Planzer. She let me know that she may or may not have been able to make it. All votes tonight will be conducted by roll call due to the virtual meeting. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes from February 3rd? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. We need to have a motion to ratify the warrants of February 4th, 18th, and March 4th. Is there such a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Motion been
Second.
made. Second. Is there any further discussion or questions on those warrants? Seeing none. Mr. Levitt, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Biscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Marks.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Is there any public comment for items that are not on the agenda? Please feel free to raise your virtual hand or speak up. Okay, hearing none, that'll bring us to pending leases contracts set forth on Exhibit 1. Could we please share that exhibit? Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, going right down the list, the first one on here is with Tradewind Aviation. That is for the flat roof building that was put out as an RFP. And Tradewind is the one who won the bid on that. This would be for a 3-year with 2 one-year options for a total amount of $122,220 in income for the airport. The second item on the list is with Airport Gas. This is a sublease between Airport Gas and the town of Nantucket. This would be for a 3-year with 1 2-year renewal options to go into the space that sits kind of behind the Airport Gas station. There's a small little office space there that is actually separate from the physical building there that they're looking to sublet out to the town. The third one is with L&C Company. This is for emergency repairs of the airport fence. The airport did lose roughly 1,500 linear feet of fence from the last winter storm, Humberto. The fence is a TSA requirement for security purposes, which called for us to quickly respond with an emergency procurement to get it repaired. And that's for roughly $165,000 to bring us into compliance, TSA compliance, so that there's no more breach to the airfield at this time. So I'm looking for your motion. Just any questions you have, I'm looking for your motion for approval of these contracts.
Any questions on any of the contracts, Mr. Levitt?
I'd like to discuss the sub-rental of the airport gas space. As I understand it, reading it, and perhaps somebody on here can correct me if I'm wrong, we're in a 20-year contract with Airport Gas that doesn't have a price adjustment for the first 10 years. So it was signed back in 2018. And they are now subletting a portion of that space, and they're subletting it for 40% of what they pay to us. And I assume that price was set at today's market rent, which means they're basically getting the advantage of the market that's moved up in the past 6 years. And none of that's really um, coming back to us as the prime landlord. Um, Generally, my experience has been on market sublets. If you're the primary lessor and you've had the benefit of a low price lease while the market has moved up, and you go to sublet it, a portion of that sublet revenue you end up sharing with the owner. And I don't see where that's happening here. And I'm just wondering how those prices were set, and I question the fairness of it.
Thank you. I likewise had questions and haven't just received this today. I also wonder why there's not a survey plan defining the lease area. That's something that I believe we had as a policy. There's just sort of a marked up kind of rough plan. I think that that leads to um, perhaps ambiguity and uncertainties moving forward. I would think that even as a sublease area, that it should be probably better defined. I think that Mr. Levitt's points are well taken as well. I'm also curious with the 2018 contract, not that you're saying that doesn't have any escalation. I believe in 2018 it would have had a adjustment for, and I'm not saying it does, but I think that that had been under the revised policy that required escalation based on CPI typically or some other factor. So, and I do see that we have, and then the other question I had on this is what is the town's intended use? I see it just says offices, and I do see that we have a representative from the town on. So perhaps Mr. Smith, if you wanted to go first, and then if Ms. McDonald wanted to address any of these questions, we'd be interested.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had reached out to the town. I haven't received a response, a direct response of exactly which, say, department or departments would be utilizing this sublease. And so again, I'm still waiting for that town. I don't know if Mrs. McDonald has a better answer than I do. I can turn that time over to her.
Through you, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. McDonald, thank you.
the town will be using the space for town employees, probably primarily as a shifting space for renovations. We'll be doing at 16 Broad. So it's meant to be sort of a flex town employee office space. There's no specific department, like not a whole department's going there. It's more like a flex space as we shift people over. Then when their space gets renovated, we'll shift them back and shift a different group over.
And then relate, and that may answer the question. I think part of the only thing I'm wondering about is, in this location, one of the things that's sensitive is traffic and sort of demand. So whether it would be a department that had folks doing, research coming and going, or permit issuance, or those kind of things, or if it's more of your static, offices type of
Exactly.
use. So that's good to know.
Yeah,
And
and then in terms of the lease area plan, we did ask for a specific laid out lease area plan from the beginning. And we're provided sort of all sketch versions. So my little haphazard mock-up there is what you see in your packet as the Exhibit E. But I don't disagree with you on that. I think the town would also like to see a more definitive lease area plan so that it's clear.
Thank you. And I appreciate your markup. That was in no way that was helpful for us to at least have a sense of what things are. But these leases, end up being long term, and if we don't get them right out of the gate, we're sort of stuck with what it is. So I think that would be information as well that I would be looking to, one, commissioner would like to see. And we also have these other questions about the rent and why we would approve a sublease that essentially cuts the original leases and cuts the airport out, I guess, is a bit of a question here. So you don't have any information on that, and I would think that the our actual tenant may, want to attend the meeting, that we consider this as well.
Right. I'm surprised they're not on here. I can only tell you from our perspective that this was a listed property for lease, and we responded to it through a broker. So so that lease, that was the rental amount that was provided to us.
All right, and again, we just saw this today, so I know as one commissioner, I'm not comfortable, and I don't want to hold the town up. It's nothing that I think that maybe can't be worked out, but I think that we would need some additional information and discussion with with the tenant, and how the overall lease might need to be adjusted if we were to provide for this sublease. Anybody else? So, Levitt, did that get you agree that with the holding this over, it's specific information?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't have any problem with the town is probably paying market rent. My itersue is that the town paying market rent, none of that is being shared with us, as the value of that property has increased since the lease was signed 6 years ago. When I read the lease, to answer your question, Art, about the increase, I just saw that the first adjustment was a market rate adjustment at 10 years and another one at 15 years. So at our 0.6 years in, there's really no adjustment. They're still paying us what the rate was 6 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that would raise a very important point for all of our leases. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't be annual, a decade, and that this might be. And again, this would be a point, though, if they want us to agree to a sublease like this, then we may have to have some mutual modification of the lease itself. So perhaps Mr. Smith, before we put this on a next agenda, could have some discussion with the tenant, and then bring it back to figure out how we may be able to make this work.
Yeah, let me just throw in two other points. Paragraph 7.2 in there says that the landlord, being us, has complete discretion on the sublet. So,
right.
We are in a position to be able to allow that to move forward, which should give us some negotiating power with the landlord. The other part of the revenue model in there, in addition to them paying us base rent, we get a percentage of sales on that property. So if they're subletting it for office or commercial use, there obviously wouldn't be any retail sales from which we would benefit. If they were conducting retail sales out of that property, we would be earning even more revenue as a percentage of their gross. So it's one more place where we take a little bit of a hit having them do a commercial sublet like this.
Okay, so let's hold this one over. And Mr. Smith, perhaps you could discuss this with the operators and see if what maybe could be worked out.
I plan to, Mr. Chair. You bet. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. And with that, were there any questions on the other two contracts or leases? Oh, did I just? Is there a motion to approve the contracts? I'm sorry, I lost it, but I moved over from with Tradewind Aviation and L&C Company, the lease and the contract.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Biscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Levitt?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That'll take us on to pending matters. Mr. Smith, PFAS investigation update.
Thank you,
Thank you, Ms.
Chair.
McDonald. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your consideration.
But at this time, I would like to turn the time over to our environmental specialist, Madison Collins, to provide the PFAS update.
Ms. Collins?
So the first thing I have is that we have signed the Administrator Consent Order, or the ACO, and we are waiting for Mass DEP to sign it. And my second thing on the agenda is that we have submitted the Immediate Response Action Report number 19, so IRA number 19, on February 27th. What this IRA outlines additionally is that a drinking water sampling event was conducted in August. The construction of 6 new permanent monitoring wells were installed in July. The installation of 7 new lysimeters and pore water samples collected from them happened in July and August, and soil samples were collected in July. Based off all of these sampling activities, no new significant site information became available during this reporting period. And that is it. I can turn it over back to you commissioners and the airport manager.
Any questions? Thank you. Terminal optimization project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, we have invited Jonathan McCready with Fenwick McCready, as well as his associate, Ms. Priyanka, to provide a kind of an overview of what was discussed at the Terminal Optimization Subcommittee meeting that we had this last week, and just to continue the further discussion with that. So I'll turn the time over to Jonathan and Priyanka.
Welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Are you able to see my screen with the
We are.
Nantucket Terminal improvements? All right, perfect. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, all. Thank you for your time today. We're here to discuss agenda item 5B, the Nantucket Terminal Optimization Project. Representing the design team today, we have Dhruv Patel from the engineering and planning team at McFarland Johnson. We have Jonathan McCready, Laura Martin, and myself, Priyanka Menon, from the architecture team at Fenwick McCready Architecture. As a quick recap, I know some of you might have been in recent meetings about this, but it might be a while for others. From our last meeting, we reviewed the previous layout study that focused on expanding the hold room capacity primarily within the existing terminal's footprint. Following this, the Commission requested that the design team explore a second approach to maximize value by further increasing capacity at the secure hold room. As a result, the design team reviewed 2 options. Option A that you see on the screen is a repurposed renovation with targeted modifications to improve capacity within the existing hold room. The second option is a permanent addition, which is a slightly different approach to assess whether constructing a permanent hold room in the area where we currently have the tent, would that actually provide us a greater long-term value? So the goal of today's meeting is to share our findings from this assessment and identify the preferred option, allowing the project to stay aligned with the IIJA ATP federal grant that we submitted for earlier in January, should the project be selected for that grant. So for today's discussion, it's mostly structured into 3 main parts. One is a brief overview about what the airport's goals were and the design targets that were established during the previous terminal design study. And then the second is a walkthrough of both the design options. And then the third part of it is concluding with a summary comparing all of the 2 options and key considerations in each. Jumping into the first section on the previous terminal study and scoping discussions, our project goals in order of priority are 1, to remove the existing hold room tent, and I say tent, and replace this with a permanent hold room space. Improve capacity for passengers, access, as well as overall experience within the permanent and post-security hold room space and boarding areas. This would also include a post-security permanent concession space. We're also tasked to look and improve on outbound baggage operations. It includes space for redundant screening machine and capabilities for that. We also were tasked to look at developing common use facilities at the gates, and establishing a coherent architectural language aligned with the island's community and architectural identity. Aside from that, some of the baseline ones that we kept across the board are implementing code and FAA required upgrades, improving passenger health and well-being in the post-security areas, consistent with the goals of the IIJA ATP grant, and meeting grant schedules and budgets aligned with the airport's funding strategy. So to frame the design options against the first two goals that are listed here, we had quantified capacity targets during the previous terminal study that I'll bring up. This was driven just from a data standpoint from the ACRP, which is the Airport Cooperative Research Program's recommendations. Note that these are recommendations provided from the ACRP tools, and they're mere suggestions. They're not, you have to go by these. So these can be tweaked and are meant to be adjusted to each airport's unique requirements and needs. Focusing on the post-security areas that are listed as sterile out here and highlighted in color, the terminal currently has around 2,400 square feet in interior holdroom space and around 2,800 square feet at the seasonal holdroom tent. This translates to around 125 to 175 seats all in. For this assessment, our target year was the year 2042. We looked at ideally having around 7,600 square feet in holdroom space, which translates to around 360 to 380 seats. The additional program needs included increasing the post-security concessions from around 200 square feet right now where it is at to around 350 square feet, and improving the CBIS area by reallocating some of the spaces for machine versus baggage makeup spaces. Aside from capacity needs, the required code and FAA upgrades include additional post-security restrooms, a service animal relief area, which could be indoor or outdoor, and utility spaces like having mop sinks or rated enclosure for electrical spaces and equipment and whatnot. Using these targets as the baseline, the design team looked at a preliminary feasibility over the past 2 weeks for two options. Option A that you see on the left side, and I will point over to it, it looks at repurposing the renovated areas, expanding capacity of the secured holdroom space, primarily within the existing terminal's footprint. And option B, which is the one to the right, is a permanent addition option, which basically takes out the tent and adds a permanent holdroom space in the same location. Just a note as we flip through these slides, as in our previous presentations, all of the post-security areas will be seen in shades of blue, and anything that is yellow is essentially support areas or back of house spaces. Before I jump into any of these, I just wanted to take a quick pause, and Atar or Chair, just wanted to funnel if they had any questions on the design goals or capacity targets so far.
Commissioners? And just to, this is what was reviewed by the subcommittee of Commissioner Buscarin and I. So it was really just a presentation for both the public and Commissioner Marks and Levitt as well. So really, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to jump in at any point. Mr. Levitt?
My only question was, I heard you mention the capacity that you're targeting for 2042, which is great to plan that far in the future. But I'm looking more at our lifespan, so to speak, over the next 5 to 10 years. What capacity do you believe is needed to get us through the next 5 years, for instance?
Absolutely, I can pull that up. So we looked at I guess the terminal study was done in 2023, I want to say. So we did look at the capacity of 2027, so that's kind of a midway point. So if we focus on just the holdroom, the sterile holdroom space, for instance, they say we need to remove the entire season holdroom, but we still need around 6,600 square feet for the sterile holdroom. So that's the intermediate number that we looked at. Does that
I'm
answer
sorry.
your question?
No, I wasn't focused as much on the square feet required as to how many passengers it has the capacity of supporting, which was some of our discussion at the last commission meeting, was trying to determine how many passengers we're able to hold in the space. And our limitation on that is based upon how many aircraft the ramp can hold and then backing into that. So for instance,
Right.
to build capacity to hold a lot more passengers than we'd have every aircraft for would seem to be overkill.
Right. Yes, we can absolutely share that number with you. It is in the ACRP tool, which is a pretty detailed Excel spreadsheet. I can send that over if you'd like to look at those numbers. I don't have that in front of me. Apologies for that. But I can follow up with that information.
I can provide some color to that, Commissioner. Based on what you see here in terms of the 2027 number and the 2042 number for the hold room, you can see that they're pretty close to each other. So the number of seats that 2042 is calling out for is the 360 to 380 seats. That, by the way, is still based on the current number of aircraft stands. We are not adding aircraft stands as part of any of this planning because the airport, as you know, is restricted and does not have the room for additional stands. The 2027 number is approximately 80% of the 2042 number. So it is the current projections are not anticipating significant growth in terms of number of passengers, number of seats as a requirement between 2027 and 2042. It's really more about getting to the need currently, which is consistent with 2027. The other very quick thing I'll say is that although a 5-year time frame does make a lot of sense, we do want to keep in mind that it's approximately 1 year of design and approximately 18 months to 2 years of construction prior to actually getting the benefit of the space. So in that regard, the actual space itself is probably 3 years out, or we're in that neighborhood. So we tend to have our horizon go out a little bit beyond that.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's
All right.
proceed, please.
All right. So diving into the two options. So now that we have our terminal capacity needs baseline defined, this is our first option, option A, which is our repurpose renovation. Just in terms of the building level, this adds around 1,500 square feet under the existing roof eaves. So we've tried to squirrel away as much space as possible under the existing roofs. It takes up approximately 11,500 to 15,500 square feet of renovations, and I'll get into why we have a certain range in a quick minute. The design achieves roughly 290 to 470 seats in the whole room with the design, which is much well within the design target range. And again, it ties back into the range in a quick minute. On the airfield side, we have gates 2, 3, and 5 that are configured to accommodate aircrafts up to A220s, representing the largest aircraft type planned for those gates at positions 2A, 3A, and 5A. Gate 1 to the south, where I'm pointing right now, accommodates E1s and 5s and others. Gate 6 and 7 to the north, which are existing aircraft positions with slightly larger aircrafts as E190s. Operationally, the landside circulation remains largely unchanged, but on the air side, with the tent gone, arriving and departing passengers flow returns to how the original intent of the existing terminal design was. I'll flip into the interior plan, just zooming in a little bit. As you can see, the whole room expands essentially southwards. This is where your existing whole room is, essentially southwards to where your currently CBIS operates. It increases the seat capacity using this sort of an approach. Departing passengers gain access to a fully enclosed interior hold room with a permanent indoor post-security concession space, additional restrooms, and 4 gates. To accommodate the expanded hold room, the CBIS, which used to be located in this hold room space, essentially gets relocated to behind the ticket counters. The direction of the existing bag belt that is behind the ticket counters is basically reversed, and bags are passed to the new CBIS machine within the space allocated, as well as there's additional space for a redundant machine out here. In addition to this space, we then also added a baggage makeup space that is completely indoors. This includes a bag belt, and it also improves baggage efficiency through that space. The back of house airline spaces, which used to be located in this, are now relocated to spaces in the basement that I'll flip to in a quick second. So in the basement, we now have a couple of units and programs that have been included. This includes airlines and TSA locker spaces. We have shared break room spaces offices, and a new unisex restroom for code compliance as well as employee comfort. At the main level, by building on space below the existing roof eaves, the renovated hold room provides around 290 to 300 seats, which is much lower than the design target of around 360 to 380 seats. So in order to meet the design target for this option, it also considers the possibility of using the existing portions of flat roof of your existing terminal to expand capacity during peak travel summer months. So I'll flip over to the roof plan that you see before you right now. So we have a seasonal hold room rooftop area that we're proposing with this option. It helps it helps this design option to meet the target capacity for the hold room. One of the pros and cons on this, it could become a distinctive design feature for reinforcing Nantucket's unique island airport experience, which is a pretty good pro for this one. It does allow for another outdoor service animal relief area as opposed to using your premium indoor space of your hold room for FAA compliance. A little bit on the cost heavier side is to meet accessibility needs. The scheme adds a new elevator. It modifies 2 existing stairs. So there's the elevator here, and then we have 2 existing stairs that are modified to serve the secure rooftop area. Before I hop on to option B, any quick questions on this layout or any areas that you wanted to look into specifically?
Any questions? I can't see everybody at the same time, so speak up, Mr. Levitt.
Have the airlines been surveyed or discussed that having their support space in the basement will allow them to keep their operations flowing?
Yes, during the terminal study, we did discuss, we had probably 1 or 2 discussions with airlines about the potential of having their back of house spaces in the basement. So they are aware of this idea.
And I can add to that as well. Commissioner, you're correct. Some of the airline back of house spaces needs to remain on the first floor because of the operational characteristics of needing to get back and forth on the ramp. Some of the existing airline space, such as offices, storage, can then be relocated to the basement. So it's a little bit of a mix in terms of the spaces that would go in the basement, and some of the spaces would stay up above. We've done an analysis of basically that mix, and it still allows enough room to be able to get the CBIS in the area of where currently is a significant amount of airline space. The other thing I'll just say for the benefit of the public, we're using the term CBIS. There's probably a percentage that is not familiar with that. The CBIS is the machinery that screens checked baggage. And so that happens behind the ticket counter, and it takes up a lot of room. So that's one of the key components of the project.
Anything else? Okay, let's go on.
All right. So this is our second option, option B, which we've been calling the permanent addition. At the building level, this option replaces a seasonal tent with a permanent hold room space. It adds around 7,750 square feet of addition and renovates around 5,250 square feet of the terminal to get us around 375 to 395 seats in the hold room space. So this is well within the range of our design target of 370 to 380 seats. On the airfield, gates 1 to the south, gates 6 and 5 to the north remain largely the same as option A. However, unlike option A, there was previously a gate between the gates 3 and 4 out here that have been outlined that used to serve smaller aircrafts like Cessna's C-208s. And by consolidating the gates between 2, 3, and 4, so we don't see the alternate positions 2A, 3A, and 4A, we are able to reduce the amount of airfield clearance required, and so we are able to expand the amount of hold room space available in the addition footprint. Landside circulation remains largely unchanged, but on the air side, with the tent replaced by a permanent hold room, we now have exterior walls and roof forms that will be built. This will need HTC approval to a certain extent, but we will try to match the terminal character as far as possible. On the interior side, just zooming in a little bit, This option keeps the whole existing hold-room space and builds towards the airfield, as you can see, as opposed to option 1, where you sort of build downwards. Departing passengers gain full access to an interior enclosed hold-room space. This is equipped with a permanent indoor post-security concession space, additional restrooms, 4 gates, and in addition to this, you will also have a concourse, as you can see that is outlined here. The concourse would serve dual function. One is channeling departing passengers to their gate locations. And then the second, as you'll see in this orange dashed arrow, it is to direct arriving passengers to the exit lanes that is outlined out here, and then into your arrivals lobby where you can pick up your bags and then leave the terminal. This layout is consistent with circulation patterns that are commonly used in slightly larger airport facilities. There are some efficiencies in wayfinding. It does reduce the need for redundant circulation spaces, and it creates the possibility for, again, a very unique Nantucket interior experience at the concourse. Since the hold room capacity is hosted outside of the existing terminal footprint, the CBIS remains largely unchanged in the area highlighted under number 3 out here. It is being modified so that we are able to hold in a redundant CBIS machine in the same location. And as a result, some of the TSA back of house spaces, the shared break room office spaces, have been displaced to the numbers 13 and 12 out here, as you see on the screen. This is currently the location of the pre-security concession space, or the gift shop, that is largely underutilized. And so this is one of the ideas that we were thinking of as a way of not moving people to the basement and trying to highlight the differences between the two options. As a result, there are no modifications to the airline back of house spaces out here, so that remains as it currently functions. The basement and roof, again, remain largely unchanged from a programming standpoint. I'll go through a quick summary, trying to compare what the existing terminal is, what the 2042 design targets were, and then option A and B in the last 2 columns identified here. And then along the rows, we have sort of outlined what our primary goals were listed during the terminal study as the top 5 items. For the hold room capacity, option A, I guess before I get into it, in summary, both options are viable and feasible from an aeronautical restrictions, code perspective, capacity needs perspective, and operations perspective. So they are viable from a feasibility standpoint. Looking at how each option performs with our key criteria or goals, from a hold room capacity standpoint, option A meets the design target capacity, but with the caveat of having a seasonal rooftop terrace, unlike option B, which actually meets your hold room capacity with a fully interior conditioned hold room space. For concessions, and this is purely post-security, both options are able to meet capacity needs. On the pre-security side, one caveat with option B, it does repurpose the underutilized gift shop space to back of house TSA space. But note that it is an underutilized space, so I just want to highlight that. For baggage operations and processing, both options improve efficiency, and we've kept the baseline constant with space for redundant machine. Option A has an added benefit with a fully indoor baggage makeup area. It does include a flat plate, which improves efficiency. Additionally, because option A installs a new EDS machine, only equipment certification is required, unlike option B, which tweaks your existing system. That requires a TSA retesting of equipment, which might impact construction schedule ever so slightly. It might be a few months extra. In terms of passenger experience, both options improve wayfinding, particularly for arriving passengers, by removing the tent. That is the baseline. These also improve access to amenities that I would like to highlight, like your interior post-security concessions, pet relief areas, and such. In terms of construction feasibility, option A seems to have definitely a more straightforward approach. You have 3 phases, slightly lower operational disruptions. Option B may have a little bit more because we are expanding to the airfield. There will be some amount of exterior work and site work associated with this. So at this stage, in terms of comparable total project costs, and again, I would highlight that these are total project costs. So we looked at construction costs, soft costs, owner contingencies, and cost to owners, for instance, like hiring an OPM. Option B does seem to be, they both are somewhat comparable, I would say, but option B does seem to be slightly lower as compared to option A. I'd like to emphasize that these costs again represent preliminary feasibility level estimates, and they will be developed based on as the design moves forward and how we understand systems and whatnot. This brings us to the conclusion of our summary. If any of the design team members would like to jump in and add anything, please let me know. Otherwise, we can open it up to questions from the commissioners or the public. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Marks.
So I noticed, I just had a question as to whether there, with either one of these options, if there's any change to the layout. Are there any like hidden costs? Meaning, like, are there any changes to the hard stand locations, the aircraft positioning outside? Because it looks like the planes move around in your drawings, and I'm not sure they're over the existing layout. And I'm just curious if there's anything there that will have to be modified that could affect this, right? Affect the cost.
Yeah, I can start with it, and then we can probably also pivot to Dhruv Patel from the civil side who can chime in. I think the costs associated with B, there might be some amount of grading, there might be some changes in terms of civil. We do have to move an electric duct bank that we have considered in both of these like cost assumptions. Even with the locations of aircrafts, they largely remain the same. But with option A, there is a sub-location for gates 2 through 5, I believe, where we have a 2A, 5A, 3A, and 5A. And that's primarily to allow for wingspan clearances between the larger aircrafts of A220s. Dhruv, if you want to add anything, feel free to chime in.
Sure. Thanks, Priyanka. Yes, so there is the main electrical airfield duct bank that is sort of in the area of the tent today. Option B would be constructing on top of that, so there is a need to reroute about 300 linear feet of a duct bank there. As far as the aircraft positioning goes, spots 2, 3, and 5, the base gates and the alternate gates sort of overlap. So there's a potential for one of the main gears to fall on asphalt today, and instead of concrete for that proposed condition. We're not fully there yet on that, though.
The only thing I would add is to the question of cost. We are currently carrying costs for site civil, and Drew, make sure I've got this correct. Based on what was just said here, because there is some additional site work as part of option B, we're carrying a cost of $2 million for the site work of option B versus $1 million for site work associated with option A. Consider those to be conservative, but we do see more as option B, and so we are including an increased amount of cost in option D for that purpose.
And would that include the offsetting of the hard stands?
Drew, I believe that is a full all-in cost for the site work that you discussed, correct?
Yeah, the option B $2 million cost would include it, correct?
The hard stands specifically.
Yep.
Not just the ductwork. Yep.
Correct.
Thank you.
And would that include providing electrification to those hard stands?
That does not include the cost of that. Yeah, I know that was talked about in the subcommittee meeting. We weren't sure if we wanted to go that direction, so we kept that out of the cost for now.
All right. I think we do want to go that direction. I mean, the commission can discuss it, but if we're digging through that area and doing duct banks, I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to provide power to the aircraft at those hard stands and eliminate them having to use their GPUs and keep the runtime down. So I think that's a critical aspect. If we're digging that up, it wouldn't make sense to not put that in.
Arthur, I can add to that.
Yeah.
As part of the numbers that we've been looking at, again, the numbers are primarily for comparison purposes, but based on what was said at the commission meeting, the subcommittee meeting, we actually are carrying within the numbers that we're looking at a separate line item as a owner's contingency. And that owner's contingency line item is intended to cover things that may be added or things that have been discussed but isn't necessarily included at the moment, as well as potential unforeseen conditions as the project moves forward. We dig a hole and we find something that we weren't expected to find. So we are carrying money for those possibilities within the overall numbers.
I think, and the commission can discuss this at this point, along with all aspects of the project, that the larger the contingency numbers are, that it seems like a floater in some of these projects sometimes could raise additional concerns. So if we have something that we actually anticipate that we want to be included in the design, my sense is that it would be preferential to have that actually baked in and not outside of that number. I think the contingency number, and so the question for the commission really is if they see the value added to the additional cost of providing that electrification while we're doing the work right along there. Again, that is, what is more typical for, I think, commercial aircraft of, the A220 type at a gate so that they, have power and not have to have the GPUs. Does anybody have any thoughts on the electrification of those gates?
I would
see
agree
it
with you.
critical.
I would agree with you on that, Arthur.
Mr. Levitt.
Yeah, I definitely agree upon that. But when I heard Phil talking about hard stands, I know we've had a lot of discussion about it over the last couple of months, but we're about to spend $1.5 million to put in hard stands. It would be very troubling to find out that after we put them in, we're now going to have to move them based
Right.
upon these two options. So it would be great if we could see an overlay of where the hard stands need to be under these options and where we're about to break ground to put them in. And if they don't line up, we may want to slow down.
Yeah, I agree. We can't, do this project right now. We've got enough of a sense here. So please, I know we've got that other project out right now, ready to go, but we can't put that in and then have to change it. So please coordinate that. And I'm sure that part of it is going to also be directed based on the remainder of tonight's discussion, which is, if in fact we're going with that option, the addition option that really may influence that those hard stands or not. And so with that, what I would like to, make the public and the commission aware of is some of the discussion that we had at a subcommittee level, weighing the pros and cons of these two options. I think many of you may know that I have favored for quite some time creating a hold room that utilized the corner of the terminal. I liked the concept of passengers having interaction, sort of view of the airfield and tying that together. But in looking at, weighing everything, my opinion is that, and I believe shared by Mr. Buscarin, is that that doesn't dictate the overall solution when you consider all of the factors. And one of the ones, while the A included the exterior roof space, which is a very interesting concept, and the subcommittee, I compared it to the upper deck of the ferries, which could be really nice in great weather or completely empty in a gray, soggy, windy Nantucket day. And my concern is that we have a fair amount of those, and that we would then, all those folks would be back into the hold room, and we wouldn't have that capacity, and we'd be dealing with the overcrowding. And whereas B gets us that amount of seats, or not quite as many, but it gets us more seats under a year or always climate controlled scenario. And to me, that outweighs the other issue. The other thing about the roof, we can go down a whole thing on it, but it required elevators and accessibility issues. It got quite complicated. It's not just a little hatch up to your widow's walk. So really added quite a bit of expense there. So I think that a lot of those reasons are why we ended up at B. So I think if we wanted to focus on everybody, where the commission was on A versus B. And then I agree completely with the former comments that we may have to either adjust the layout of B or pump the brakes on figuring out what we're doing for this work on the hard stands right now. I understand the need and the concern with the potential rutting and whatnot, but it's going to be worse to put that kind of money in only to take it out in the short term. So, Mr. Levitt.
2 points. One, I will agree with you about the roof issue, because the other thing that was running through my mind is I guess I'm old enough to remember when one could go down to Terminal C at Logan in the old TWA terminal and go up onto the roof and watch the airplanes, which, as security concerns increased, they cut that off. And I would hate to see us build a roof area that some new security regulation came in that would not allow us to use it. So that would be another reason to argue against that. I have one other question on Terminal B. I'm wondering if we could go back to the page that that had a little larger that layout there that we're looking at in the top right corner there. Yeah. My question over there on the right side between your two number 5s, I notice you've got a number of walls there with a lot of 90-degree turns in them. And I think we all know that construction is considerably more expensive when you build walls like that as opposed to a straight wall all the way across, which would also pick up the square footage in between. Is there a reason we're leaving all of that open rather than taking a wall straight across?
I can take that one. Yes, so we were trying to expand our footprint as much as possible to get as many seats as possible. So keeping that as our baseline, we started looking at our aircraft position. So you see the A220 here, along with its parking location, and it has a tug that comes at the nose. So we were trying to maximize space, and this is just an exercise to maximize space. It does not mean that the terminal might be built with these jagged edges. We might actually change the concept, and as we massage it through and get your capacity in, but make the architecture work with the space. This could change. Right now, again, just being a feasibility study, we just focused on just the baseline, maximizing capacity, and it sort of approached the whole angle of trying to keep the minimum space for tugs and maintain that airfield clearance while maximizing capacity. Does that make sense?
And I can add a little bit to that. So the A220 that's shown parking at gate 3, the A220 is the aircraft that JetBlue is flying. We can't push that back any further to the right because the tail gets too close to the taxi lane where other aircraft would be transiting. So the aircraft where we're showing it here, that's pretty much where it has to be. So then what we do is the yellow line is basically a safety operational area around the aircraft for where basically the ramp workers will be able to move around the aircraft. Priyanka mentioned the tugs pulling the aircraft in or pushing it out, being able to maneuver in that area. It creates basically this sort of yellow safety line. And so from that yellow safety line, we then identify an offset to have a little bit more operational flexibility in working with our partners at McFarland Johnson, and we wind up with the shape that's shown here. I agree with the comment as well as with Priyanka's comment that the exact configuration of this shape is open to further development. One of the things that we anticipate is that when we look to the massing of the building and the pieces and parts and how it looks in 3 dimensions, which we are not there yet. But in working with the Historic District Commission, there is interest in taking large volumes and breaking them down into smaller volumes. So this may be a direction that we would wind up heading in order to maintain the designing with Nantucket in mind type approach with the HDC. That said, again, reiterating, there does need to be a gap there for the tug operation. In terms of how many jogs there are, that's going to be a balance between the Nantucket character, the permitting process, and being cost efficient and maximizing internal space. Sorry for the very long answer, Commissioner Levitt, but that's sort of what we're considering.
No, thank you.
In that area.
Thank you. It makes sense.
Further discussion on the the direction for the terminal project. And again, just to reiterate this, particularly for the public, I think that this one of the main goals is their elimination of the seasonal tent with this project. And so this is what we're hoping to move forward with. And you know, we still have out there that we're extremely hopeful of being successful in our grant application, which would cover a significant amount of this, though I believe we're likely to have to move forward, you know, one way or another, with a project for the long term benefit of the airport and the traveling public here. I don't think that the commercial service is going anywhere, and I think when the tents went up, things were just kind of testing the waters a bit. And I think this is the new normal, is my sense of things. So, is there support for the recommendation of the subcommittee to move forward with the design concept B? Yes. Okay. So everybody's in unanimous. I don't know that we need a roll call vote. I think that you've got that provides the direction that the architects need and the engineers. And then now, if we need to have any refined scope or task orders for both MJ or McCready, then the staff can work those out. You guys can all let us know what else you need. Do you need anything else from us at this point, Mr. Patel or Mr. McCready or Raka?
The direction that you provided is extremely helpful to us making progress. That's what we're hoping for this evening. So we thank you.
Okay. Please keep us posted. We're happy to have status updates. Any questions? We'd rather have those come up along the way than find out that further down the line, you know, someone made an assumption that might not have been in line with, you know, what our thinking was. So that'd be great. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Smith, anything further on the terminal?
Not at this time. Okay. Thank you, Mr.
All
Chair.
right, thanks again for all of your efforts, and sort of, I understand it was a bit of a scramble, but I think that we're going to end up with a much better project as a result of this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is the housing production plan. We just received that a couple of hours ago. I have been in meetings all day. I have not even opened it, to be perfectly honest with you, and to receive something just that soon. So, you know, I don't know, Mr. Smith, if you want to do a general overview, but I presume it might end up on the next agenda as well. I know I'm not really prepared for.
At your discretion, Mr. Chair, we can even punt this to another discussion. Either
I think it might be better. I think, you know, and how the rest of the commission feels, that I personally would rather have a little bit of time to review the materials. Does that make sense to everybody else? Or do you want to have a presentation for Mr. Smith and then review them? It's up to you guys.
I'd delay a month.
All right. Sounds like we'll put it on the next agenda. And then we will turn it over to our fuel subcommittee, Mr. Marks and Mr. Levitt, to give us an update, please.
Why don't Phil and I kind of split this and go back and forth? Back on February 10th, the fuel subcommittee had its first meeting. The attendees at it were Phil and myself, Warren, Preston, Billy, Maria, Elizabeth, and Dean Geddes, a reporter from the Inky, was there as well. So it actually got a bit of coverage in the local paper. The strategy that we outlined at the outset of the meeting and why we felt we were there was very simply, we want to sell more fuel. And why do we want to sell more fuel? Fuel sales pay for the airport operating and capital expenses. And having sufficient fuel to sell actually minimizes aircraft operations and noise. Aircraft and passengers are coming to Nantucket whether or not they can buy fuel. The folks in the back of the airplane are not going to make a decision not to come because fuel isn't there. They're going to come anyways. And if they can't buy fuel at Nantucket, they have a couple of options. They can drop the passengers, then reposition the aircraft to purchase fuel elsewhere, and then reposition it back to Nantucket. So what that does is it adds one more departure and one more arrival, not only putting wear and tear on the airport surfaces, but it creates more noise. They could tanker additional fuel in. By doing that, the aircraft lands heavier. They use more runway. The thrust reversers run longer, which is obviously more noise as well. And we lose revenue when they purchase their fuel elsewhere. So lots and lots of good reasons why we want to have fuel to sell to them, and many reasons why we shouldn't be, why we shouldn't restrict fuel sales. So what are our problems? We have supply limitations, and we've come up with a few solutions. The first one is the lack of ferry reservations. I think the staff's done a good job that they reported out that this year in July and August, we'll be getting 17 loads a week versus 14 last summer. So right away, that's going to add about 300,000 gallons of additional fuel that we'll have to sell. And we are looking at options to charter additional ferries and barges. The next issue that we have is storage limitations. A few solutions that have come up is World Fuel, our current fuel supplier. They can provide 3 additional fuelers and potentially upsize the ones that we have. JP Noonan, which is the trucking company that delivers fuel to us, can leave 2 trailers at the airport this summer, giving us another 20,000 gallons of storage, 10,000 gallons in each. And the key to all of this is expanding the fuel farm, which Phil will talk about in a second. Another issue that we discussed, if we have and are going to be selling additional fuel, what are the logistics challenges, starting with personnel? Preston reported that we now have 10 full-time personnel and 12 seasonal, which are the equivalent of 8 FTEs. We indicated that we're short-staffed. He'd like to see us at 15 seasonal, which would give us 10 FTEs. We talked about the challenges in recruiting additional staff. The suggestion was made that we look at counter-seasonal FBOs, such as ski towns, South Florida, Scottsdale, Palm Springs, and Warren was going to be reaching out to some folks he know at some of those people, which I think we definitely need to be on top of right now. We're only 3 or 4 months from when we would want those people to start. Some of the other topics that we touched on were that the ferry reservations that we have now are in the name of the fuel supplier. Going forward, those should be in the airport's name so that we have a little bit more control over them. We want to develop specs for our fuel supply contract and obtain multiple bids on it. And while we're doing that, our current fuel supply contract is an evergreen contract. And we believe we should just let it keep running until a new contract is in place. And we also discussed our fuel retail pricing strategy, which we believe needs to be tightened up a little bit and establish what that strategy is. One of the keys to all of this, though, is the ability to expand the fuel farm. And I'm going to turn it over to Phil to talk about that.
Okay, so since our meeting and prior to the meeting, I've done a bunch of research. I've got a bunch of quotes from different people to provide a double wall tank that doesn't require to be in a moat. I've gathered the transportation fees, steamship fees, the of quotes for the concrete piers that they'll have to be mounted on. I've done an estimate on the piping costs only because we don't have an actual plan yet. And the pumps that would use in their crane installation. Yeah, we need the plan to get the excavation. I'm not sure, and the electrical, they shouldn't be too horrible. The fire is kind of a wild card for me. I don't have any experience with that or knowledge. I think we just have to, once we can get kind of a plan together, we can reach out to our existing guy for that. The fence is pretty straightforward. We just did the fence down at the end of the runway, so we have a sense of what that's going to cost us. One of the other issues that I was having is just the environmental one. And from what I'm not sure what that actually means. It's actually a parking lot now, so I don't see what environmentally other than the dirt that would be in the ground there. And I would imagine that would be treated just like the same way the last excavations were done over there, where we'd have to stockpile it, in the middle of the airfield where our other PFAS is stored from, the berm project that we'd ended up doing. And then obviously the contamination of the vehicles. I just wanted to firm that up to make sure that would be the case. So to date, without having the excavation, electrical, the fire suppression thrown in the budget, I'm at about $700,000, and I did carry $100,000 for a contract management person to manage the project. So Preston didn't have to do it all. I think if we're smart, we'll actually purchase a lot of this hardware ourselves, and then we'll hire people to put it in. And I think we can use local contractors to do everything here, like all the piping. If the plans are done right, it'll all come pre-welded. It just has to be bolted together. So we'll need some local people to put that together. So at $700,000, Mike and I have discussed this. I think if we look for $2 million as the outside of the budget, refine the finer points of this with a proper plan. And I think we can move forward with this. So I think, for the money spent, I think we can end up with 72,000 gallons of storage, which is a far cry from where we were before. So that's what I got.
Art, you muted.
Sorry, thanks. I didn't want my creaky chair driving everybody nuts. Thank you for that, both of you, for all of this work. And for the next step of implementation, I presume we would still need to have a task order of some type for design, or is that something that that you still envision having MJ put together the specs, or how do you get to that next step?
Yeah, I think we need a plan. We need to do a plan to add on to the existing tank farm plan.
Right. And so
with our input though, right? I mean, we want to explain how we want to approach this so that we don't.
Yeah, well, I think that what you're doing is perfect for establishing the scope of
Right.
The services that we would be looking to engage the design team for, and then to smoke out any, additional unforeseen regulatory or otherwise hurdles that may come into this approach. But with the legwork that you've all done, sort of says, here's, put a fine point on it. This is the direction we want to move. And I guess the question would be, I see that, whether Mr. Patel has any comments on this, or how we go forward to try to engage with MJ for developing a task order for something like this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think sort of what Mr. Marks talked about is a lot of good relevant information for us to take and develop a scope for. We've definitely worked on fuel farm expansion projects at airports recently.
So I think what we want though is sort of the scope to be per the subcommittee's direction, right? So that we're not, evaluating all these other alternatives. They've kind of done that work, I think, and the question would be, what's it going to take to put a plan together that implements and researches that? So is that something that you guys could pull together for us? And is that the recommendation of the subcommittee?
That is our recommendation, and I'd be happy to work with Mr. Patel and just kind of explain the thought process too, so we can kind of see why we took the approach we took too. So,
Mr. Mascarin, you in agreement with this approach? Support of the subcommittee's recommendations. I think that's where we're at. Mr. Smith, any thoughts or comments on this, or Mr. Harriman?
Yeah, I can turn the time over to Mr. Harriman, my assistant airport manager. He might have some more details and specifics when it comes to the regulatory pieces, if he's willing to share that.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Thanks, Arthur. I think, as I've had some communications with Code Red, which is a company that, firm that we've used in the past with the last fuel farm project that we had, there's a lot of regulatory and regulations that come behind this as far as fire codes, electrical codes, and other things that I think we're not thinking of at this point. One item that did stick out real quick was this project of this size is going to have to end up at the state fire marshal's office with stamped engineering plans. So I definitely think we're going to need an engineering and planning firm to help us along through this process.
Thank you. And I think that we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
We want to have MJ, take that for us. We hopefully just establish in which way. And you worked with the subcommittee, and, so do you have just, any other thoughts on the direction for the scope that we're heading towards operationally?
No, I mean, I'm in full agreement that we need the increase the capacity, and we have the room currently. Yes, we're gonna have to relocate some rental cars, but I think we can do that successfully. The one good thing on our side is the current fire suppression system has the capacity to cover additional tanks, because I do think that the fire chief and the fire marshal will want these new tanks, whether if they're in a moat or just sitting on a concrete pad with secondary containment built in, they're going to have to get sprinklers somehow, some way.
Probably some kind of frame type.
Possibly, yes.
System.
That is kind of unknown, I think, at this point.
Okay.
Do you mind if I do a quick comment on the short term that Mr. Levitt was talking about earlier?
Yeah, no, please. Yeah, we welcome all discussion at this point.
So we did discuss the possibility of having the spare Noonan trucks on site as a standby mechanism to be able to use those to fill our tanks, as space became available. We had a sit-down meeting with the fire chief, and they do not recommend us going forward with that option. Number one, they're DOT regulated tanks, and it opens up a lot of other regulatory regulations that we would have to comply with. It would have to end up at the state fire marshal's office. So they would recommend that we just stick with the leasing of the additional airport refueling trucks, because they're on private property, because they're inside the fence, they're less regulated, and we have more flexibility to operate those. So that's the route that we're going. The Noonan tanks, I think I did speak with the Noonan cousins, and it is now more of an emergency type of situation. If we needed to get them here, they would be able to help us out. Again, it comes down to reservations, because those would be utilizing the 17 that Mr. Levitt had spoke about earlier. So we're still continuing with World Fuel as far as leasing the additional refuelers, and we've actually received one already.
Thank you for that. It's all very helpful. I
Yeah, I
appreciate
just
the
wanted to
effort.
just clarify that while everybody was on the call here.
Anybody
Mr.
else have
Chair,
anything? Yes.
I just wanted to get a little clarification. You're looking for task order to do just the design. I just want to point out we do not have a capital article for this project. We don't have one requested for this upcoming town meeting, so I'm not 100% sure how we're gonna pay for this. I mean, I guess if the commission is looking just to do the design, we're talking about $100,000 or $200,000. We could do it through the operating budget, and then we could request a capital article for 28. We cannot use the home rule petition because there is no grant involved. So I was just looking out for a little bit clarification how the commission is planning and would like to do this.
My sense is that it would be professional services under
Right.
operating, like you said, but once we have a sense of that cost, but we also need to start putting forward the capital project for this. If we need to do a transfer or some other mechanism to perhaps advance it to whether there's a special town meeting that might happen. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know, but to try to get it into the queue so that we would be ready to do that. I think that's what we're gonna have to do, Mr. Levitt.
I am operating from a remote location. It's actually Florida, which is why I'm in the polo shirt. But I have a slide that lays out an option for doing this. If I quickly email this to Billy, can you put it up for us?
Yes, sure.
So let me do that right now. And let me see if that came in. And it's sort of a quick and dirty budget, and a way that this can be done to fit within, as I understand the way the budgeting process works and where we are on the calendar. And we may have a very short window and an opportunity here, since it seems like we have pretty broad support for something like this. That make it 3D. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let me just sort of walk through this and what you're looking at. As Phil explained the numbers, to add these 4 tanks, we strongly believe that for $2 million, we'll get change back from our $2 million bill. That even with the things that Preston has brought up about engineering drawings, state fire marshal, I'd be interested if anybody sees that we haven't built enough contingency in here to do this job for well under 2 million. And then I guess we could discuss what well under is. In terms of where does this money come from? I think we all know that we have a margin per gallon of fuel that we sell of $4 north from there, which means that we break even on this if we sell another 500,000 gallons of additional fuel, which I think we've circulated some other reports that have shown that we think that's pretty easy to do with the traffic that we have here, which is about 51 additional deliveries. The issue that Art was just talking about how do we get this through the approval process in town. The funding source for it would be the fuel revolver, which Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's got about $4.8 million in it now before it's replaced.
Mr. Chair, through you, we
Yeah,
do
you-
have $4.8 million, but we are using 1.4 at this current town meeting. Which obviously, as of June 30th, the funding balance will change as well, because this is the funding balances of prior June 30th. So it's technically after town meeting will be $3.4 million, but it will increase obviously once we get closer to end of the year.
okay,
Right,
let's
and
go on an assumption is enough there and then keep going.
okay.
Because I'm
So
still.
if we go to the second page, and I think everybody knows now, I like to kind of push the edges as to what's permitted. But my understanding and chatting with a few folks is, if we, for instance, were to approve that we want to add $2 million to our existing capital plan, and we get Capcom to approve it over the next couple of weeks and FinCom to approve it, then that would be taken to the finance director. And there's an April technical meeting with a capital warrant article. They make technical changes. And then it would go to the town meeting. So what this basically is saying is that we do have a small window here where we could jam this additional $2 million into our capital plan. If it turns out that we didn't do it this year, that $2 million, which would have been budgeted out of the fuel revolver, could roll over to future years. And if the project comes in at less than the 2 million, those excess funds that aren't spent can go back in and be used for something else. So we have what, unless I'm missing something here, what looks like an opportunity to get it into the budget now, so that we can start this project. And we would start with getting the design and the engineering done, which will let us get, of course, a better handle on what the total cost would be. But it would mean that we wouldn't have to wait an additional year because of the budget cycles to get going on it.
Ms. Pashiva, any thoughts on how this would work?
Mr. Chair, I mean, we kind of discussed that with Mr. Levitt earlier. It is not impossible timeline-wise, but we might have to make sure that the finance director, town administration, and obviously Capcom and FinCom, they're all on board and willing to meet and discuss. We're gonna have to prepare very well for this meeting and prepare and provide everything that they going to ask, if they're even willing to do that. And then there could be added technical amendment to Article, I think it's 18, which is the enterprise capital. And it could be added as a technical amendment when FinCom meets end of April to approve technical amendments. I just don't know with the since Capcom's final report is already completed and finalized, and I just don't know how that's going to work with, and if they will be willing to work with us.
Right. And even if so, I have some concern that pushing this fast to try to do it this way is going to raise additional concerns that we haven't done enough of the homework, right? Where we've got a subcommittee recommendation. Would it, if we're going to go through all of this, again, I'm supportive of the project completely, but I'm trying to, think about how we, in fact, don't run into, questions of these are your pretty just good guesses here at some of this stuff for an undesigned type of a project. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do it this way. And maybe we need to, back to the original point, that if the design is going to come in more than we can handle under the operating budget, then, that's a whole other piece of things. One of the things that comes to my mind, like I just have to say, I'll be shocked if we could do this for $2 million. And I know that you haven't looked at it from the other way. And one of the reasons that the things that regulatory, get into, and just for example, that frame or sprinkling right there, stanchions and putting all that whole thing. I think about just how much a rehab of the farm we have cost and something like that. So I just I believe there's going to be unanticipated expenses by the time we're done. And I say this with all due respect, Mr. Patel, that the pesky engineers get their hands on these things in the plans, right? And everything then is, factors of safety, and you have sort of the way that we think, oh, we could just do it this way, but then get yourself a stamped plan that covers everything that then a contractor bids on, I think ends up being typically more than we may have, hoped for. So if we're gonna go this way, my sense would be, and we're still far, far below where we had been talking about the numbers that had been floated sort of originally. I would like to see a larger contingency and or an additional line item, perhaps for another million for sprinkle, fire suppression or what have you. I just personally would be because again, we run into the same exact problem that I've seen on so many projects. If the appropriation isn't enough, you've done all this work and you rushed it through, and then and the bids come in and you can't get it done. So that's just one thought that I have on it. In terms of trying to put this, a technical amendment is then also very likely to, I think, that came as a result of not your typical process of the lead up to town meeting is likely to be more, subject to, has a greater chance of further, more discussion on the floor of town meeting. And I think when the fact that you're at, it's seen as the money's related to, jet fuel sales. Mr. Levitt, you're sort of opening to this whole thing is, of course, what we would try to explain. But I do think there could be some additional concern and challenges with that approval. So those are just some of my thoughts there. I really wonder if we don't want to take a route that sets this up for next year and relies on the refueler leases and the additional reservations and all these other factors for this year. So that's just my thoughts for discussion, Mr. Viscarin.
I kind of like giving it a shot this year, even as a dry run. We would sensitize the FinCom and the CAPCOM to our need for this. And even if it got turned down, at least they would understand the process a little bit. I'd say we have a less than 50% chance of getting FinCom and CAPCOM to approve this. But if you get to the town meeting and the warrant isn't called and the FinCom recommends it, it just slides through. So I don't see there's any downside in giving it a try.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony, for that support. To go back to Art's first point, if you're nervous about 2 million being enough, the numbers and the justification still work if we change that to $3 million. And because of the way Maria's explained the budgetary process to me, we have the 3 million in the fuel revolver. And if it comes in a lot less than that, the money goes back in and can be used for something else. So there doesn't seem to be any downside to asking for more than we really need.
Yeah, I'm all right with that, and I'll support, going forward with that. I just don't know that maybe what one suggestion might be, and not to have so much in contingency that raises it, but I mean, did you guys discuss or contemplate a fire suppression system, and like, is there a number? Is it just that you add one more line item to sort of the graph that you already did that puts that in as a number? Instead of just having it boxed into the contingency, because I just have this feeling that could be an outcome here.
I think that was my one area that I have no experience in, so I couldn't really dive into the fire system. And I don't disagree with you on that one because I don't know where it's going to go. But the rehab did a whole lot more than just and where that system's big enough. It should just be piping and sensors. I mean, but I don't know. So I agree with you on that one facet of it.
Yeah, I mean, my just gut is it's probably I can envision it almost like you drive by a gas station that you've got the mounted suppression tanks that are above the regular pumps, which obviously they've got shut off valves, all these other things too, right? But you still have that initial volume um whatever they use for the suppression, the foam or what have you. So I think if we could agree to have an additional line item that said fire suppression and put it in it, I mean, $1 million seems to me to be on the hopefully very high side, but I mean, we don't know. We are shooting from the hip a little bit. Perhaps there is before there, is an opportunity to refine that a little bit between now and then, maybe working with MJ, and then whether or not and then the question would be how I think we're going to have a special meeting or two, that gets us ready if we're going to be going before Capcom. And so there's a couple other things. So maybe we can give this another round. You've presented this. There's clearly you've got the support of the commission. And then see how we can figure out these other finer pieces on the numbers and putting something together, and maybe a little bit of work with MJ, and then we bring it back again, because I suppose we're gonna actually need a formalized revised budget to vote on.
Well, and maybe over the next few days, Preston and Warren and anybody else who has ideas for line items that should be put in there. We were trying to keep it short and sweet
Yep.
tonight, so we only have those 4 line items. I've got a legal pad with a couple of pages of lots of numbers written on it, and we didn't want to get too far down into the weeds, but we certainly do have an in-between number that there are more line items there, and then some of these things that we have forgotten about. And we can be sure that we have enough contingencies built into the overall budget so that if this does get approved and move forward, as Tony has said, where this is a test case, we would hate to fall flat on our faces on it and find out that after doing all this work, we don't have enough money to properly complete the job.
Okay, I agree. So if we could do that now, Mr. Smith, you had mentioned to me you thinking that for the hard stand that, to stay everything on track, a meeting next week. But one of the things I was wondering about is a meeting in 2 weeks from today, if that would work. It splits the next commission meeting, and I was wondering how that might work for everybody. In other words, that way there, and gives staff and everyone a little more time for the work, and then we have a meeting 2 weeks from today, and then we have another meeting 2 weeks after that, our regularly scheduled meeting, and it just keeps us on track working on all of these projects, if in fact that works for the commissioners and staff, if that makes sense.
Fine with me.
Mr. Marks?
Yeah, I guess the plan is the important thing, right?
Yeah, well, we can't really, I mean, part of it would be, getting this approval would then bake your funds in for into the budget, as opposed to just pulling out of your general professional services line item, I believe, right, Mr. Shiva?
Mr. Chair, through you. So the proper way to do this, and of course, if we get Finance Director, Town Admin, and Capcom on board, is to add an capital article in Article 19, which is the Enterprise Funds Capital Expenditures.
Yeah.
We can appoint a funding source. So if it's something up to $3 million, we could use the fuel revolver as a funding source. We could also use borrowing as a funding source, which doesn't necessarily mean we are going to borrow, because Article 19 is going to be effective July 1st. We cannot spend anything out of this article before July 1st anyway. So this is going to be for the new fiscal year 27. We could do borrowing, spend as much as we needed, and then next year at the annual town meeting, we use Article 3 and transfer money from retained earnings or fuel revolver or reappropriate from other articles.
And I think, and I know we're really getting into the weeds on this, but it might be better to have it, even if the intent is to pay for it from fuel revolver, to have it as borrowing as the authorization, because then if we use it out of the fuel revolver, but we needed that fuel revolver amount to buy fuel because of the additional sales, would that run us into?
This is actually we're talking about the fund balance of the fuel revolver. So everything
Right.
on top of in our expenses stays in the fuel revolver as a fund balance and gets transferred every year. So it has nothing to do for where we are paying for fuel or anything like that, but it's more like on the books on the general ledger side. So I would personally still do borrowing. As we go, as we see the project might be too expensive, we might just do the design piece. And then Article 3 next town meeting comes, we use Article 3 and we transfer from either fuel revolver or from retained earnings, or we can reappropriate if we have some leftover money in a different articles. And that's what we usually do, and you see that's what I'm doing this year in Article 3 as well.
Mr. Levitt?
Um, I would take the other side of that argument, that I think proposing to spend money with borrowing raises a lot of red flags. And in fact, I think later on the agenda tonight, there's a slide that shows that the funding source is borrowing, when in effect we really never intend to borrow more money. My understanding of what shows up as the fuel revolver is not really the operating fuel revolver, but it's sort of this extra funds that we know we're going to bring in because we're not allowed to budget for what their fuel sales will really be. And those are the additional fuel sales above over the budget. So that's money that's stuck there and is parked in that fuel balance, and it can't be used to buy the additional fuel. That would come from another appropriation. So I would be much more comfortable if, when we went to Capcom, FinCom, and town meeting, that we indicated that the source of funds was this fuel revolver, which is cash we have, rather than raising the specter of asking for more borrowing.
Will that work as well, Ms. Bashiva?
Yes, absolutely. The funding source will be the fuel revolver.
It's certainly a stronger position.
No, it is. We've been doing that technique kind of. We do borrowing and then we transfer here and there. We reappropriate funds from a very long time. But if the commission is feeling that this will be presenting a stronger case in front of Capcom and FinCom, that we already have those money, that's totally fine. My only concern is like, is the cost going to be less than $3 million? Because technically, after town meeting, that's how much we're going to have, about $3.2 million.
Well, why don't we work on that in the next 2 weeks? Right? As you guys crunch and decide what that final thing is going to be, and then we can decide, and then we can finalize that. I mean, these guys, we were at a committee level that was at 2. We just bumped it to there, hopefully. So I think that we've got a direction on an approach that is a significant savings from the discussion we had, or presented with 3 months ago. And then let's see what we can come up with when we get a more detailed sort of spreadsheet put together on anticipated costs, as well as discussion, even back of the envelope with MJ, in terms of, have we allowed enough for engineering, or, might it, what that might look like. So we have that number. And then talk about this again in 2 weeks and figure out, hopefully that still leaves us with enough time for Capcom and FinCom meeting. Does that make sense to everybody? Anything further?
If I may, Mr. Chair, my only recommendation will be, even while the fuel committee and the rest of the team is working on that final pricing, we still reach out right away to the finance director.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please let them know, what we're thinking about or what we're hoping to do. and our approach to this. Again, all with the interest of that it's gonna be, self-sufficient, that it's gonna help, support the airport, that this is being done so that we're not having to put in fuel restrictions, we're solving problems and helping to support the airport. With this project. I think that's really important.
If I might suggest that it might be a stronger position if the airport manager and maybe Commissioner Levitt reach out to the finance director. Of course, I want to be involved in
Yeah,
that.
no, certainly through, my intent would be that, yes, this would be at Mr. Smith's, right, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Understand. Yeah. Anybody have anything else on that? Okay, we'll have this on an agenda in 2 weeks. Thank you again, everybody, on this. Any other questions? Let's see any. All right. Town meeting, warrant articles. I don't think we need to get into the detail on every warrant article. Just if there's anything of specific interest or concern. I think this would be the time. So, Mr. Smith.
I was just going to turn the time over to Ms. Bashiva to present.
Bashiva?
But it might be best just to ask if any of the commissioners had any comment on any of those.
Ms. Bashiva, did you have anything you wanted to present, or that just leave it to us for any questions?
I can, if you'd like, Mr. Chair, I can just briefly touch base on some of the articles. Very
I
quickly.
think only if it's anything out of the ordinary that we wouldn't already have seen in the warrant, and from what we already reviewed them to put it on there. Anything of concern that you want us to consider?
No, nothing of concern. I guess if the commission has particular questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Perfect. Mr. Levitt, you mentioned there was one that you were looking at.
Yeah, if Billy could bring up page 95 of the one PDF, which is the sheet that shows all of the 2027 projects and the funding sources. Next.
Commissioner Levitt, I can just
Stop this one right here. I'll let Maria talk about that because I had asked her about it earlier.
Yeah, so this is Article 19, which is the Enterprise Funds Capital Expenditures. These are all the projects that we submitted to Capital Program Committee, and this year they approved all of our requests. And I know we listed some of the funding sources as borrowing, and this is kind of standard for projects where we expecting or anticipate grants. That doesn't mean in any way we are going necessarily to take on a long-term debt. This structure just give us some flexibility to see what we are actually gonna spend in the current fiscal year, because some of the projects might be pushed from the FAA and MassDOT for future years. So we don't use, let's say, retained earnings, and we get our retained earnings locked in that particular article for years. And then this also give us the opportunity in the future town meeting to use Article 3 and decide what we can use best, either retained earnings or fuel revolver, or reappropriate some money from different capital articles where we have some surplus left. A lot of the times it's all about timing. We spend current money in this fiscal year, but then the next year we get the reimbursements from the FAA, so we end up with bunch of cash and the project has been completed. So that's when we reappropriate and we reuse those money for different projects. But that doesn't mean we are going the plan still for the airport commissioning for us here at the airport administration is to not take any long-term borrowing.
That's great. That was my question. My concern was that we're not committing to take on any borrowing, and I love your answer.
Thank you. Any questions on any of the other warrant articles? Okay. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we'll go right through the project updates for the AIP projects. The first one is for the high mast lights. The light fixtures that are compatible with the approved control panel are now on back order, actual manufactured back order until September That's per the contractor subcontractor. They've let us know that this week. This pushes the project to the fall to start, so it really won't overlap with any of the operations of this summer now based on that. Like I said, it's just due to the manufacturer. They've stopped manufacturing that type of light fixture until September, so we're waiting on that. With the master plan, the FAA did approve the ALP. That was provided to the commissioners this last week just for a final glance. Of course, this was previously approved, reviewed by the commission. That was then subsequently sent to the FAA for their approval. Just wanted to see if anybody had any questions on the master plan at all with that ALP. I didn't see any otherwise, so I'm assuming we should be good with that one. All right. Yeah, and then the next one is the commuter apron resurfacing project. The geotech was completed. It was sent to the FAA for their final review and consideration of the project specs, and hopefully their subsequent approval of that to proceed. We're actually just waiting on the FAA for their response back from that. So that's all that I have for the AIP projects. For the non-AIP projects, the sound barrier noise wall, 105 shafts have been drilled. 66 concrete footings have been poured. There are a total of 111 piers. Snow removal of the project during this last big storm did cause some dirt to be put onto our ramp as they were trying to remove some of the snow. So Airport Ops is kind of assisting with sweeping the ramp to ensure that we eliminate any dust and any FOD that could be collecting on the ramps. To date, I drove out there today, 7 piers have been installed as of this afternoon. The 2-week look ahead is the paneling began arriving today. Those are the bottom courses of the paneling. They're looking to finish the drilling, finish the rebar cage, finish any grading, and then the post placements. The vegetation management is next to be coordinated for the topsoil material pulling for that project. For the concrete hard stands, Gate 2, the notice of award was signed by me today, and we're receiving MJ's correspondence that the awardee has accepted. The bid total, along with MJ's costs, have the project just over the $500,000 appropriation limits. So McFarland Johnson is reducing that cost to bring this under the appropriated amount, and we will have that total contract completed for the next special meeting, which you have suggested in 2 weeks to award that contract, and this will keep the project on schedule for completion prior to the scheduled air service that we're anticipating by mid-May. No tenant alterations were provided at this time. So that's what I have for the AIP, non-AIP projects. For the RFP bid status, the RFQs for engineering and planning services are currently in progress with the submission deadline of March 25th. The airport did conduct the site visit yesterday for the engineering and planning. We did have over 6 different companies attend, roughly over 15 people in attendance. So there is good attendance and there is good interest in the next 3-year engineering and planning services out there for Nantucket, which is great to see. The RFQ for the OPM terminal optimization and geothermal projects was also issued on February 18th with the submission deadline of March 25th as well. So we're waiting that one. Operations update, the perimeter fence, as I had brought up earlier in the meeting with the emergency procurement of the perimeter fence, the airport did lose roughly 1,500 linear feet of perimeter fence from this past winter storm. The areas that were affected were at Matacashan Valley and Nobodere Beach. The temporary fence has been installed and is in place. Because that is considered a breach, the TSA required a 24-hour watch of the fence line until the temporary fence was put in place, which we did. And I do want to give a great shout out to the staff for keeping the airport safe, for the overtime that they did provide to ensure that we kept TSA compliance. It's not an easy feat, especially staying up overnights. I've worked many night shifts in my life. That is not easy to do. So I do commend them for ensuring that we didn't have any wildlife encroaching onto the airfield. And this is also especially tender in time when security is heightened worldwide due to the conflicts in the Middle East. And so I'm pleased to say that my staff were very diligent in that. We are now currently working with the town on the insurance aspects of the fence, and more to come. Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have some more information on that. We are starting to finally see some movement with the airline side of things for this coming season. And we hope to have their seasonal schedules by the next AirCom meeting in April. TSA, the Department of Homeland Security, is currently shut down with no funding at this time, which does affect the TSA. TSA will see no paycheck next week. This shutdown has definitely been more silent in comparison to the previous shutdown that happened in the fall, which is causing a bit of concern on the TSA side as I met with them earlier. However, business is still usual here at Nantucket, and there is no disruption to date. Training, we did have the annual wildlife hazard training that was done yesterday for management, operations, and maintenance team. And that's all that I have for the operations updates. I can go through the statistics if you'd like, or I can forego those at this time.
Yeah.
You bet. I can.
Anybody have any questions on the manager's report?
No.
I just wanted to be sure the whole commission had seen the final ALP and whether you had any comments for Warren, and it sounds like everybody's okay with it, so I will go ahead and sign that. I didn't want to sign it until I was sure the commission had a chance to look at that. Okay, and did you have anything on the personnel report?
Just personnel real quick. We did hire a full-time 5th janitor that will oversee cleaning of the ARF and the FBO buildings, and also provide some assistance in the terminal during peak season if we have like a janitor say need to go on vacation. And then we've also hired a replacement ops ARF staff member. One of our staff members, Sergio, he left us last month as his intentions were to go off to school. He brought forth a lot of great years of service for the airport for AC, and we're sad to see him go, but pleased to see him wanting to pursue his career aspirations. But we have hired his replacement as well, so we're back up to full capacity with staff. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioners' comments, anything? Public comment, anything? Hearing none, we will not have an executive session tonight. Perhaps on that meeting in 2 weeks, we'll have that, please. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, motion made and seconded. Mr. Viscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Levitt,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.